Stories inform us to what is possible. Stories influence us to what is needed. And stories inspire us to what could be. Stories happen when people live their life to the fullest. These are the storytellers. Hi, Darren here. I'm in the great city library of Nashville, and I have this rare opportunity to interview a great interviewer. His name is Mr. Nashville. His friends know him as Larry Ferguson. He's famous because he has interviewed from stars to nationally known activists, or internationally known activists actually. He has a very diverse group of people that he solicits and gets wonderful interviews with. And it's very revealing. But what's really neat is he was able to give me some time to interview him. I'm kind of turning the tables on you, that's right, Larry. So thank you for giving me this time. I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. So tell me, how did you get into the industry of interviewing people?
Well, I'll tell you, when I was a child, I loved talk shows. From the very beginning, music and talk shows. I never was a real heavy cartoon kid, you know, and things like that. So at 5 years old, I was watching Barbara Walters specials and 2020 and 60 Minutes and all these type of shows. And she actually was my favorite because she had all the big name people that, you know, as a kid you loved the movie stars and everything. But then I would see, you know, her interview Gaddafi and Ronald Reagan, and you know, so I got anything she did was really interesting to me. And so I never thought I would get into that field. I wanted to be a journalist, you know, text journalist. And then I got to host a little show as a teenager. They went to school for me, and then I hosted the show. It was a local, like, kind of like an Entertainment Tonight, but a local show in my hometown. And so they would call on me a couple times to do different things after that. But life went on, you know, family happened and everything. But I entered into the music business, which was my other love, you know, probably my bigger love.
You're a music producer now.
Yes, yeah, I produce. And I started out in concert promotion. And then I went to, I managed an artist that was one of my favorites, and I had done some concerts with her, and then I ended up becoming her manager, and then through that ended up producing TV specials and music. And then after several years, I thought, I'm going to do something, you know, for me that I enjoy. I don't care about money, I don't care about anything like that. I just enjoy the conversation. I'm a people person anyway. You know, I can sit for 15, 20 minutes talking to anybody, you know.
You talk to a fence post.
Yes, yes. So, you know, and I like to research. I like to study on whoever I'm talking to and things. So it came out, you know, I wanted to try to, you know, attempt it. And it worked out really well. At first I was just planning on little short things, and almost everybody I've ever asked has said yes, which is a challenge, you know.
You've done some pretty big names like George Wallace, not the governor. Yeah. George Wallace, the stand-up comedian, actor.
Yeah.
How did you get in touch with him?
Well, you know, he and I it's funny how we actually started communicating was through Twitter, you know, and there's been a few people I've actually met through Twitter where they've liked something I've posted, or I like something that they posted, and we end up getting into the direct messages and you know, that kind of. I saw he was coming to town, and I asked him, and that worked out for me, he and I, and so I really enjoyed him. You know, he was in he was one of my favorite stand-ups, and that's how I, you know, was even conversing with him. But yeah, I like to interview the stand-ups because I love the storytelling. I love comedy. And then I like to do, of course, music's my love. So that's another one that I like to interview the music people, and so I just reach out to them. Some of them I know, or I have a friend of a friend, or sometimes they reach out to me if they're through their publicists.
You did. I told everyone that you were very eclectic, very diverse. Mm-hmm. You've done Dennis Banks. Now, some people might know, but he was an internationally famous Native American activist.
Yes.
Tell me about him.
Yeah, he was, Dennis, he passed right after I did my interview with him. I kind of call him the Martin Luther King of the Native American movement. He was the founder of the the American Indian Association or Foundation. And really to get the rights that a lot of people don't know what the American Indian, they don't understand the plights of there's a whole lot of issues with social issues like alcoholism, not being able to get the right type of jobs, because there's no jobs really on the reservation. They've got to go outward to that. So it's like they live in two nations, because they have their land, the reservation, and then they have the American federal, or local neighborhoods that they're basically right in the middle of, they're just one little plot of land inside of America that's really almost like an outside country, of its own.
And Dennis Banks became famous because of that incident at Wounded Knee.
Wounded Knee, yes.
In the 1960s.
Yes.
Tell us about that. And excuse me, by the way, if you want to see Mr. Nashville's interviews, you go to Mr. Nashville's site, and there's a whole list. For example, George Wallace and Dennis Banks, and a whole slew in between. But getting back to Dennis Banks, would you please tell us about that incident? Because I think it's so neat that you got to talk to him. Yeah,
and he was a great man. I was really fascinated talking with him, and I could have talked with him for hours. With Wounded Knee, there's a history of a lot of tension between certain areas where the reservations are and the actual American soil, but the feds went in and there was a big standoff between the feds and the American Indians. It was ruled that we were at fault, that the Americans were, or the U.S. government was at fault, and a lot of people were hurt and everything, but it was Dennis and a few other people that really stood strong, in rallying up that cause to, first of all, keep their people safe, and to get the right, make sure that they were represented appropriately in court, and a lot of great people like Marlon Brando, Harry Belafonte. That's how I first came to know who Dennis Banks was, because I remember they helped him, and this was before I was born. But I watched a lot of historical documentaries and read, and so I remember that. And what kind of made the big news was the two Indian guys. They thought, well, we're going to do like Marlon Brando. We're going to wear dark glasses, show up to court, like movie stars, and sit right there. And it got in all the papers like that, and so they became little stars. Had they not done that, I don't think it would have spread as much as what it did, because that picture was so popular. But yeah, he's really a fascinating man, and what he's experienced, and the good work that he's done. Sadly, he had a granddaughter who was murdered, decapitated, and he worked hard, to get that case.
Did they find out who did that?
I think I can't remember exactly the outcome. I think they did, but I don't think that it was ever, time was served or whatever. I'm not sure exactly on that. And I know Dog the Bounty Hunter helped him a little bit on some things and stuff.
Really?
He's got a lot of connections outside of, and Loretta was a friend of his, and he told me one story, Loretta Lynn, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
One story where she was just hoarse, and so he made her up some kind of Native American remedy, and whatever it was, it worked. So she was like, well, I need him to come to the next couple of dates I'm going to be at, and so he went on out and he did that, and Willie Nelson was a big supporter of his, and just a lot of great people.
You know what's unique about you, Larry, is you are a lover of history. You're a student of history, and you have brought that history forward and connected it to well-known. I bet there's nothing really that happens that you don't understand it from a historical perspective, because I think it was Mark Twain that said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes an awful lot.
Yes.
So things are happening today that I bet you can relate to. Oh, this has happened before, and this is how we got through it. Exactly.
Yeah, there's so much of that. I mean, if you look at even things going on in our country right now politically, and sometimes it's just the flip of the coin, where one side, all these groups are on this side, in the correct side of history, they end up flipping over to another side. I mean, so everything, like you said, it kind of all rhymes, it all kind of gels together at some point, or at least comes close enough to where you just like, well, look, this happened before, this is how we fixed it before, this, especially with American politics and history, it's like we repeat ourselves a lot or come close to it.
I just got an idea, because we were talking about Dennis Banks and history and your love of it. Brad Meltzer.
Yes, I love it.
Did you read
Decoded? And I haven't read his
newest one, The First Conspiracy, which is about George Washington, the assassination attempt, and it was within his own personal bodyguard that it was that.
I want to read the book.
Yes, it's great. I've got it. I've finished it. I'll loan it to you.
Oh, great.
But
I love his show too.
This is very self-serving. I want to keep a connection with this man.
He had a television show called Decoded. Have you seen it?
No.
And he has like 4 or 5 investigators, and they take unsolved, events that happened in history, and then the conspiracies around it. And then he sends the investigators out to kind of do their research, and then at the end they all come together and make a decision on what they, think happened, or what they could not determine, or what they did find out that's not reported. It's a really interesting show. I think it's on History Channel. I love History Channel, National Geographic. I watch all those shows. Yeah,
what I want you to do, because I watch his interviews a lot, because they're so diverse, and you get these inside stories that you normally wouldn't. You need to get in touch with Brad Meltzer.
Oh, I love that.
Because that old thing, there's only 7 separations from anyone in the entire world. Because of who you know already, I bet you could get a connection with Brad Meltzer.
Well, I would love to as well, because I'm a big fan of his work and his writings, and just he's a lover of history like me. He's a lot smarter, but history, and that's why I love Nashville.
I wanted to find out from you, because you've interviewed so many famous people. Who came across as the most humble, grace-filled person?
Well, as far as the ones I've interviewed, I will have to say the one that kind of touches me the most like that was Monique, who is a Oscar-winning actress. She's a stand-up comedian, is how we first knew her. But then she got into acting, and she was just the most gracious, most now on stage she's really, in control, and and so you might get different impressions of her, but she's very, very down to earth, very people oriented, and very personable. And I remember saying, I appreciate you doing this, because we're not on the same level. She said, "Cut. We're going to stop. There are no your level and my level. We're on."
She said that too.
Yes, and I thought that was really, really kind and really sweet. And for her to give, we didn't know each other, but I had met her, and we made a good impression. So she agreed to do the interview, and that just blew my mind that she did, without having any connection.
Now, I've watched 8 interviews.
That was not out yet. It's coming out.
It's coming out.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to share with everybody. So they're to be looking for the interview with Monique.
Monique, and then country singer-songwriter Bobby Bear, country singer and gospel singer also, and she used to be a pop darling too, Jody Miller, comedian and used to be on The View, Sherry Shepherd, Charlene Tilton, who was Lucy Ewing on Dallas.
These are all coming up.
They're all coming up, yeah. Roseanne Barr is in the works. We're going to work, do one.
Is Roseanne coming to Nashville, or are you going up?
Going to her, yeah. I'm going to go to her. I'll go if it's worth the trip. You know, if it's worth the trip, I'll go. And I'll find a lot of other people while I'm there too.
Talking about going someplace else, I was in Washington, D.C. last week. And I'm walking down North Capitol Road. I was doing a workshop. I was giving a workshop for a federal agency up there. And I had some time off, and I'm walking down the road. And I brought this, and I was so excited about interviewing you today, and then just last week. I'm in Washington, D.C., and there's someone walking down the street, and look what they had on.
Oh, really?
Mr. Nashville.
Yes, that's
So
my shirt.
I ran up and I said, hey, are you from Nashville? And he said, no, but my mother watches Mr. Nashville.
Oh, I love that.
And he said, I was there a week ago, and I tried to get a hold of Larry Ferguson, but he was out of town.
Yeah.
But my mother got me this T-shirt.
I love that.
Isn't that neat? In Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C. I had somebody in the airport. I was going to Virginia, and they didn't have the shirt, but they had seen the show, and they stopped me and told me. And then we were at a drive-through with me and my kids, and so that made me feel real good because the kids are there, because they don't think anything about it.
How old are your kids?
My oldest son is 19, so he's not really a kid, but to me he is. And then my youngest will be 15 in August. So yeah, they're pretty.
They treat Dad like Dad. He's done a famous interview. Dad, you know so many people. They're just so on.
Now my oldest son, he appreciates a lot of what I do, you know, but he's just so used to it, and it's not, you know, if it's somebody he's into, then, you know, or somebody he's had me a lot of times work it out. So if somebody he wants to meet or something, you know, he'll get me to help him out.
Make the connection.
Yeah. Now my youngest son, though, he really nothing impresses him. Not about what I do. Yeah, right.
15. Yeah. Because this interview is about you, and I'm once again thanking you for giving me your time.
No, I love it.
But I want you to share with the audience, because I know there's people out there that would like to do what you do. What would you say to them? How to get into it, or how to be a success at it, such as yourself?
Well, I would say if you really, really want to do what I'm doing anyway, of interviewing people, that, you know, make sure you know the people, that you've researched, that you come more prepared than what the whole interview is even going to be about, because you don't know what kind of, they may take a turn and you're lost, you know. So I think you can never over prepare. And then also when you be prepared not to use any of what, you know, is other than your starting point, because you don't know what personality that person's going to have. They may just take over the whole thing and go into a whole different direction that's more interesting than what you had planned. That happens a lot. But I would say never give up. It's not easy, but you have to push yourself to do it, and you're going to have to use a lot of your resources, you know, you can't, you know, go get the president right off the bat or something like that, but don't be afraid to ask and get told no, you know.
How many times?
Well, I've been fortunate. I'd be prepared for, if you've asked 10, to get 10 no's at first, and just keep trying. It just depends, and if you, and what I mean by 10 no's, I'm talking about 10 different people. I'm not saying just keep asking the same person over and over, but come back later on if they have a new project, or a year later, build yourself up and build a little bit of a clientele of or a roster. I'm sorry, of people you have interviewed. It depends, So that's what I would suggest. Just put your heart into it and make sure you can do it. If you can't talk to somebody, then it's not going to work. And you have to hear what they're saying, because if you're just going by a strict plan, outline, and they start talking about something altogether different, and you're not listening, you could you could really hurt yourself. Maybe take up some just little extra classes on how to talk on camera. Even if it's like in a modeling agency, to learn to because they teach you how to do commercials and get, loosen up or whatever. But study the greats. Watch Barbara Walters. Don't watch like a lot of the new interviewers. I mean, because they're all talking about themselves. When you're interviewing somebody, for example, I won't say the person's name, but they're interviewing someone about their new store that they just opened up. Well, they'll say, your new store, John Doe's Candy or whatever, and then turn it back and say, well, I have 5 candy stores myself, and I found the same thing, and actually what I did was, and totally forgot the person they're interviewing. It's all about them, and we're just having, Now if it's billed that way as a conversation, that's different. But if it's an interview, then I think that's very disrespectful to your guest.
Some of the stories you've heard here are people that have started their own business or are in business doing phenomenal things. They make the community that they live in stronger. And the other stories are educators, people that help people, and this makes the community resilient. I ask you, what is your story?